Hello there, I'm Braden Lee from Sturgeon Heights Collegiate, and I'd like to introduce you to variables in Java. So first off, what you're going to need to work with in Java, instead of just working in Notepad, which doesn't sound too attractive, is an integrated development environment, an IDE. I like to use NetBeans, and you can get this easily just by going to the internet and going to netbeans.org. And then you just click on this big download free button, and it gives you the option to download an environment for Java, C, C++, and PHP. But I'm just going to be working in Java, so you can just get away with downloading the Java EE, which is the extended edition. So once you have that, you can go ahead and start that up. So on the topic of variables, while this loads up, you probably remember what a variable is from your math class. Back in algebra, we often see variables as letters, like x, and they're used to contain a value. And in Java, they're used in a very similar manner. Carrying on with this example of this x, let's say that x equals 5. In this case, x is the name, or the identifier, and 5 is the value. Now in Java, the only difference is that we must also declare the variable with a data type. This tells the program what values you might put into the variable. Further down the road, you can make your own data types with classes, but for now, Java has 8 built-in data types called primitives. So I'm just going to run through them all and create one of each in Java. You can do this too by going to File, New Project. It picks out the one you already need. Thank you, NetBeans. And then I just entitled mine Intro. And it gives you this option here to have it create a main class for you. And what a class is, it's going to be covered later, but it's just kind of something that you can work in. It's where you put all your code. That's all you kind of need to know for now. So we'll do that. I've already done that. Here it is in main. It gives you a bunch of this documentation, which you don't really need. Oh, by the way, on documentation, this grayed out stuff isn't seen as code. It's called commenting. Now, the way you can comment, and the reason why you would comment is, say you have this whole thing of code, and it's really hard to understand what it does. So you can just kind of say, oh, hey, this does whatever. You can kind of explain it, because later on down the road you're going to be working with other people, hopefully, or just in case you have an old program you bring up and you can't remember at all what you were doing. It's just really helpful. And the way you can do it is 2 slashes, and then you see it goes gray. Or you can also do 1 slash and 2 of these Shift-8s, asteriskes, and then typing all that you wish. And you see, just by hitting enter, NetBeans, very helpful, creates this kind of end right here, which is just one of those stars and another slash. You can also, right in the middle of your code, do the same thing, all on one line though. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go down to our main. Now, what a main is, it's the starting point for your program. Java is going to look for this main method, and it's going to start reading through your code through there. So I'm going to go ahead and create one of each of these primitives, and you can do that too. So the first one on the chopping block is the byte, and you'll notice the text of it goes blue. This is because it's a recognized word in this IDE, and it has a special meaning to it. Just a nice little visual cue from NetBeans. And I'm going to give this byte a name, just like we did with x before, and I'll call it a number. And a byte is 8 bits of memory, so it can range from negative 128 to positive 128. I'll initialize it with 0. So just to look at, byte is the data type, number is the identifier, and 0 is the value. Next up is the short. And let's call this, I don't know, number 2. And I'll also equal that to 0. So a short is a whole number from negative 32,768, I think 8, all the way up to 32,767. So that's 16 bits of memory. And just like before, short is the data type, number 2 is the identifier, and 0 is the value. It's important to remember that you can't have identifiers which are the same. Like you see, if I go ahead and make this number, oh, it's mad at me. It says it's already defined, so you'd have conflicts. However, it's completely fine. Let's say if I made that B capital, that's fine. But I can't have it exactly the same. And for the identifiers, it's common coding practice to have them as lowercase, because usually classes and whatnot will be uppercase. It's just a style thing, though. The code's not going to be confused. Next up is the integer, which is just int when you're declaring it. And let's call this integer. Mix it up a bit. No, I'm not going to call it number 3. And I'll initialize it at 0 as well. Here, integer is the data type. Integer is also the name. Hope that's not confusing. And 0 is the value. Okay, and now this integer, it has quite a bit more room in it. It ranges from like negative 2 billion to about positive 2 billion. Notice a trend going on there. And yeah, this is the one you'll probably use the most out of all of them. And we'll get into that a bit later. Now, next one is the long. And we'll call that long number. And that's because, well, longs are really long. They range from, I think it's 9 quintillion. It's really big. So let's just put lots of that. And you see it's going to get angry at me. And it says integer number too large. Hey, that's not an integer, that's a long. If you encounter this, you just got to put an L at the end, and so that way it'll say, oh, that's a long you're making, not an integer. I see. Carrying on, the next one is the float, and this is a bit different from all the other ones before, because this isn't going to be a whole number. This is when we first get into decimals. Let's just call this one limited pi. Now, pi, as we know it so far, goes on for infinity. However, you can't really get away with doing that on a computer. Oh yeah, it just keeps going. Don't worry about it. So it has a limited range. I don't think you'll find it though, just using it. And here we see it's getting angry at me because I have no equal sign. But it's also getting angry at me because I have a loss of precision. I can fix that by just typing a little f here. And then it's happy. But yeah, that's when you want to use decimals. And the next one also deals with decimals, however is a lot larger, is the double. This one uses 64 bits. Oh yeah, compared to the 32 bits that the float is. So I'll just call this bigger number. And I'll equal to that phone call. I'm going to ignore you. And you see I put a D at the end of it. That's just to tell it, hey, this is a double. So in this example, double is the data type, bigger number is the identifier, and 9,000, well, over 9,000 is the value. And now the next one, you thought I was mixing it up with decimals. This was taking it to a whole new level. This is the char. The number, or sorry, the name will be letter of the day.
Okay then, and the letter of the day is D.
Now some things you want to notice here. With the naming, I've been going ahead and even though there's no spaces, you can't use spaces. That's not allowed. I've been capitalizing the first letter of each word. That's called camalCasing, and that's just a style thing, so you can really see what's going on and you can read it easier. You'll also notice that unlike the other ones, this value here, it's not a number. It's well, it's a character. That's what char is short for. It's one character off of the ASCII table, and it uses 16 bits of memory. And also, you should notice that you have to use these little apostrophes here to declare it. See, it gets mad when you don't. Oh. NetBeans sometimes tries to help you, and it doesn't really help. But that's okay. It helps you more often than it doesn't. And finally is the boolean. Usually booleans will start with is, and that's because of what they are. And a boolean is only one bit, actually, so it's either a 0 or a 1. It's either true or it's false. So is a boolean, is this boolean our last primitive that we're going to go through? Why, yes, that's true. So finally, you want to say boolean, that's the data type, is last primitive is the identifier, and true is the value. So one thing you want to keep in mind, though, is your identifiers, you want them to make sense. Like, these more or less make sense. 0 is a number, arguably. 9 quintillion-ish is a long number. And this is the last primitive. You don't want to go naming all your variables Bob, Steve, and Karen. It gets confusing. So those are our 8 primitives, but I'll throw in an extra one. Just an extra data type. No extra charge. So there's a class that comes with Java, which is often thought of as a primitive, and that's called a string. For right now, the fact that it is the primitive, that won't change much for you, but what is important is that a string is a sequence of characters. Here's an example. String name equals, this time I use quotation marks, not just apostrophes, Braden. And so string is the data type. You'll notice that's not blue anymore, and that's because it's a class. That's really the only thing you should notice different. Name is the identifier, and Braden is the value. And you can use spaces in here. It really doesn't matter. A space is on the ASCII table after all. And so, oh yeah, something you should notice about strings is that this S here, as opposed to all the other ones, is capitalized. That's also because it's a class. But yeah, that's the only thing you really have to that you really have to remember. So I'm going to be straight with you right now. The only ones you'll really end up using most often, despite what you're putting into them, is probably going to be integer, double, character, boolean, and string. You won't use these other ones because they pretty much do the same job as the others, but it's a matter of memory efficiency, which isn't going to be incredibly important for these introductory programs that you're making. But next time we're going to be making a new file and possibly your first program. So that's pretty exciting. We're actually going to be using these variables that we've just gone through. Not all of them. I'm not going to promise we're going to use all of them, but some of them. So hopefully you watch that so you can really strengthen your knowledge on everything we've gone over in this video. And thank you for watching.